Elsewhere on the African continent, Kenya's top prosecutor dropped charges against 4 lawmakers over anti-government protests on Monday. It came a day after opposition leader Raila Odinga suspended the demonstrations. Odinga had earlier said he was ready for talks with President William Ruto as long as authorities halted arrests connected to the protests and addressed his concerns about the rising cost of living and reforms to the electoral system. Now, thousands took part in 3 marches over the past 2 weeks against soaring prices and alleged fraud in last year's vote. All 3 turned violent, and a 4th march had been planned for Monday. The 4 opposition lawmakers, who included the leaders of Odinga's faction in both houses of parliament, were arrested and charged with unlawful assembly in late March, then released on bail. Well, Arise analyst Mark Bichachi now joins us to bring us up to speed with the recent political developments in Kenya and how far President Ruto is ready to go to pacify the opposition. A very warm welcome to you, Mark, and let's get straight into it. You know, we had this conversation with you just last week, and I remember you had said that the prospect of a political handshake is Raila Odinga barking up the wrong tree. None of the parties are interested in doing so, and as they continue to confirm that they are not interested in any hybrid government of any source, what's the end game here? Because it looks like Raila Odinga yet again is having his way.
Well, indeed, it's quite interesting because over the weekend, what happened is Senator Kun from the United States did a lot of shuttle diplomacy between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. They were impressed upon to climb down from their hard stances. The president gave a very reconciliatory speech, and that's where really the ice broke between the two. Now, the same Senator Kun brokered the same kind of agreement from Raila Odinga. Now, the question on everybody's lip is what is the agreement? The first part of the agreement that we know that is public is that, number one, the president will allow for the opposition to have input on how the electoral and boundaries commissioners are assembled and are selected. So that is one very important part. The second part is Raila Odinga has said that he is still going to push the issue of having the cost of living addressed by the government so that now the people can have reprieve in how things are going. The third issue, of course, is the issue of the past election and whether the president will allow there to be introspection into the servers and whether there was any form of malfeasance in the last election. Now, that particular issue is in abeyance. No one knows exactly what the president is going to say about it, but it seems like there is going to be a political settlement between the two, brokered by the United States of America.
Thank you so much, Mark. Now, of course, you know that earlier on the arrests of those 4 lawmakers, it seemed rather strategic and subject to interpretation. But now that the charges against those lawmakers has been, basically dropped, I'm just wondering how significant you think this might be in boosting chances for dialogue between the president and the opposition.
It is quite interesting because it's not only the lawmakers who've been let go. It is also 2,000 other protesters who had cases in court. So this it has been a sign of goodwill from the government. But it's also a very interesting climb down for the government in the sense that the preparations that were being made for the Monday demonstrations on both sides of the divide, it was supposed to use Raila Odinga's word to be the mother of all demonstrations, and to use the words of Rigathi Gachagua, it was going to be the last time Raila Odinga was ever going to lead a demonstration. And given that Raila Odinga had 7 bullets shot at his car in the previous demonstration, it was seemed like we were ready for a serious escalation. So the moves of making sure that the leaders of the opposition, the parliamentary leaders, and the 2,000 demonstrators, the cases have been dropped, is a big and clear sign to the country that the president and his government are willing to have talks in a peaceful manner with the opposition.
Now, earlier you highlighted some details of this agreement, which of course focus on electoral reform. Now, do you feel these electoral reforms, once implemented, will have any bearing at all on the past election, or is this a preparation for a Raila Odinga comeback for a sixth presidential attempt?
The answer is both. That on one side, it will reflect upon the previous election. Why? Because Raila Odinga has on a narrative that says that the previous election were rigged, they were stolen, and therefore he wants there to be some form of justice in the previous election. But also at the same time, knowing Raila Odinga, he is preparing for 2027. He's preparing for another stab at the presidency. Now the question is, will his coalition partners agree for him to actually stand in 2027? That is something that remains to be seen.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. Clearly, Kenyans are not pleased with the high cost of living, amongst other things that actually caused the protests. Just wondering what the reactions have been based on this recent development.
Well, a lot of Kenyans have been tweeting at Raila Odinga, telling him that he should not go in to get positions in government. Instead, he needs to defend them. He needs to defend their need to have the cost of living reduced. He needs to stand up for the people. So what people are hoping for is through this dialogue, the cost of living will be reduced. One, by having the subsidies that were there being brought back, some of the punitive taxes that have been put on electricity being removed. So these are the issues that need to be addressed, and those are the issues that the people are pushing Raila Odinga to make sure he does. They don't want him to get into government. They don't want him to have a position, but they want him to keep defending them and what they think is their just cause.
It's interesting that you say that because, of course, William Ruto came into power based off of what was perceived to be the support of the Mamamboga, the Boda Boda, that's the commercial motorbike riders, and the market women. But these protests seem to be exposing that his base of average people, the common man support, if I may call it that, has been eroded. Is this an accurate depiction of a decline of William Ruto's popularity since coming into office?
Yes, indeed. He has suffered quite the hemorrhaging of support, and various opinion polls have proven this, because he came in on a very pro-poor, pro-needy basis. But since he got into office, he had promised that he would have poor people in his cabinet. He's not done that. He had promised that the cost of living would go down. He has not done that. So he had lost a lot of the support that he has enjoyed before. And what had happened in recent times is a lot of people, even those who were participating in the demonstrations, were previously part of his what was called the Hustler movement. So the Hustler movement and its support had one largely shifted to Raila Odinga, who now seemed like to be connecting with the people, and those who were still supporting William Ruto were not as vocal in their support of him. So this again is part of the reason why many suspect that William Ruto had to climb down from his hard stance about these demonstrations to listen to the people, even as they came out in their thousands to support the cause that Raila Odinga was fronting.
Arise analyst Mark Bichachi, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time as always.